Welcome, everybody. David here for, I guess, this week's Griscom stream. We'll do it. We'll do this Tuesday night, election night special. I made a special graphic for us. Country over party. Glad that y'all are with us. We'll be watching these results come in. Please jump into the chat. This will be a more casual thing than our main show. So feel free to jump in with any takes or ideas, or keep us up to date with what's going on. I have a few of the trackers up, but it'll be very helpful if all of y'all in the audience can participate. But it's not just gonna be me blathering on by myself this evening. Matt is disposed, but I'm joined by two really, really wonderful gentlemen and good friends of mine. Gene Bachelon coming to join us from the great state of Missouri. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. How are you doing this evening, David? Are you excited about the Festival of Democracy that is taking place this evening?
I'm I'm feeling some way. We'll get into how I'm feeling in just a little bit. I've been a little bit up or down. The Texas stuff is looking a little bleak, but that was pretty expected. But we'll get into that. But we want to bring in our other guest because he's going to be with us for just a little bit. Our good friend Jason Miles joining us from exile. How you doing, brother?
I'm hella exiled out here. Hey, didn't Missouri just go for Kamala Harris? Didn't she win Missouri?
I don't think she did.
I think she did.
I don't think so.
I think she won Missouri.
Jason, where are you getting your news from? Jason's been I'm all stressed out and worried, right? And Jason, I've been texting all evening. Jason's like, everything's looking good.
Yeah, don't worry. Y'all are tripping.
Because Jason lives in Mexico, he doesn't have to worry about this.
Yeah, it's those
I mean, all my stuff is still in the United States. I just stay down here illegally, like all good imperialists. But seriously, it's not over, man. Don't trip. Like, you knew she was going to lose Texas. You knew she wasn't going to win Florida. She can still win Arizona. She can still win Michigan. She is winning Missouri. Gina's over there hating. I don't know why.
I don't know what you're seeing, Jason. I mean, look, we'll see. I mean, it's
wait, what's it say? What's it say? Put it on the screen.
I'll put it on the screen. Here's the AP. AP.
Go to Politico. They give you better lies.
AP right now has Missouri with the check mark with Donald Trump next to it. So,
he won it already?
Yeah, I think so.
This election was stolen.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, it is. I think it is true. And this is like, I don't want to sit around and do a bunch of predictions and look stupid tomorrow because it is going to take a little while to know who wins. And yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I'm not so much in the game of predictions, but I had a feeling that she wasn't going to be able to, pick up those southern states. I wasn't very confident about Georgia or North Carolina. And again, these could change pretty dramatically, so we don't know. But as of right now, those don't look too good for her. But I had always sort of seen her path through, like, the quote unquote blue wall, and picking up potentially Nevada.
Have you seen these Virginia numbers?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's people will forget, but like, it's within living memory that the president would win nearly every state. But now it's totally a crapshoot.
I know.
It all comes down to a couple of 100,000 people spread across 7 states, and that can flip on a dime. So, I think there's, a lot of people are guessing and wish casting about what they want to happen. But, for me, it's such a fine margin. It's like it could go either way. There isn't really a strong, neither side seems to have a particularly overwhelming momentum.
Mm-hmm.
In previous elections, it was always kind of obvious who was going, at least until the Obama, the final Obama election in 2012. Everybody knew Obama was going to win. There was obviously, you never want to count all your eggs, your chicks until your eggs are hatched. Yeah. But No, but
You can count your
ultimately,
eggs.
even in
He
2004,
got
even
his
if
sayings mixed up. One was British, one was American.
you can't fool me again. But you had close election in 2000, but very often there's kind of a momentum around the
Yeah.
election. There's no big surprises. The thing is, at the moment, the way the electoral map is there is no big surprises, right? It's all
Very true.
one of these coin tosses. It's not surprising that Georgia is looking like it's going for Trump. It wouldn't be super surprising if it went for Harris either. But yeah, Texas. I don't think Texas is going to flip.
Well, no. I mean, the Texas stuff. I want to talk a little bit more in depth about the Texas stuff, like as the night goes
Yeah,
on,
let's hear
because
it.
there's. We'll get there later. That's the dessert,
But for
because
the presidency,
oh, it's absurd. It was absurd. And what I'm just saying, like a little preview of that is that like a big part of the Texas hype, and it's been hype a few cycles now. It's because they didn't want to admit to the big Democratic Party donors that they're probably going to lose the Senate. So they needed to have like an excuse and something that's like, oh, this is going to be a battleground state. Maybe we might beat Ted Cruz, and they wanted to use that to kind of fundraise. But I totally agree. I mean, I've to get us started. Like, I have two quick questions. I've two questions for y'all to do it kind of rapid fire because I asked Matt this on Sunday, because I do think this is one thing that is interesting about this campaign. Is like, what was that final message? Like, if you were to tell me, as somebody who follows politics, right, closely, or just like a normal person, like, what was the final Kamala Harris message going into the election?
For me, it was I watched a lot of the ads because I go to a local bar here in Rosarito and watch the football games. So, when you have the NFL package, you watch football from all the different regions. And one of the things I noticed for the presidential ads was the last week I saw the ads, she was saying, if we win, or once we win, he's over. And I thought that was an interesting campaign slogan to kind of end the insanity, because there is a lot of people that are tired of Trump. Trump has definitely split the GOP. It's not like the GOP is all on board, as we've seen with this new shift. I think the one interesting thing about the Harris campaign too that we saw was this like openly disregard for certain men of color, like Black men and probably even Latino men to a certain degree. Kind of, jokingly on the show, we've been saying we think the Democratic Party has traded Black men for definitely for Black women and white women in suburbs who bedazzle their jeans. So,
no, I mean, I don't think that that's like, too far. I mean, we'll have to see like what these final results are, but like, the fact of the matter is like what has been like the Democratic Party's like argument for their like dominance in our lifetime is that, oh, the country is going to become more diverse, and
sure.
and that's going to lead, to just Democratic Party super majorities. And the problem with that argument is, the demographics might shift a bit, but that doesn't mean that people are going to vote that way, right? It was a very race essentialist argument, and I think like Texas, in a lot of ways, is like the perfect example of that. Texas is a majority minority state, but you see this every like cycle for the past 6-8 years. Has been, the Republicans are suddenly picking up more votes with Black voters and more votes with Hispanic voters. Now,
this speaks to one of the underlying assumptions of American politics, which is true of both Republicans and Democrats, is this racial essentialism. We often frame the Republican Party as being the racist party, and in certain ways that's true. But also the Democratic Party, its perspective, or at least a large segment of the commentary class, the pundit class, and the consultancy class, does think in a kind of racially essentialist way. They might not have necessarily the negative stereotypes, but it's really expressed quite well with this idea that the Democrats used to push, which was demographics as destiny, versus the great replacement theory. Because if you think about it, those are just the same theories, right? Functionally speaking, those are the same theory, just one with a good spin and one with a bad spin. So there is this racially essentialist thinking. And I think this is also true of the Republican Party as well, because you have a certain element within the Republican Party that has all these kind of sometimes quite like defined types of racism, but more often than not a kind of incoherent bigotry as it were. It's not they're not like
I think it's
ideological,
coherent.
incoherent bigots, right?
I think it's pretty
But,
coherent.
no, I mean,
I
but
think you know who they hate.
but it's not like they're not acting. There's also they're almost kind of ashamed by it, or they might have good relationships with minority people on the other hand. But what I'm trying to get across is though that I think those people who are many Republicans who might have kind of negative opinions about minority groups on the basis that they assume that they're liberals actually shoot the Republican Party in the foot because they have a potential to expand the vote amongst socially conservative migrants into this country, amongst Black people. If only they could like stop having comics make jokes about Puerto Rico.
They won't let go of the racism.
I'll give you a concrete example.
Mhm.
I know two people. One of whom was of Puerto Rican origin, and one of whom was of Mexican origin, both of whom have voted for Trump, both of whom are Republicans, both of whom are ex-military. And what pushed them over the edge? They're like, you know what? Screw this. I'm not going to vote. That just was the one thing that triggered them.
The Puerto Rico thing.
The Puerto Rico thing triggered them a bit. Now, on the flip side, the Democrats have the same problem that there's an assumption. Well, the demographics are shifting in our favor, without completely. It's almost like in military history they talk about armies are always fighting the last war, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the discourse the Democratic Party is deploying against the Republican Party is based on these kind of racial stereotypes, but I think the kind of racism you find in the Republican Party. But in reality, I think what we're looking at, I think what the Republican Party is transforming into under Trump is it's not that it's shedding kind of the racialist elements, but really it's laying the foundation for a potential multicultural, socially conservative coalition that is, unified around a kind of small business hustle culture that is rooted in kind of traditional family values and a message that can have an appeal outside of like the traditional white Republican base. And I think if people assume that people vote on racial lines, that leaves these kind of gaps open, which, depending on which side you are, perhaps the Republicans can take advantage of it, perhaps the Democrats can take advantage of it. But
the Republicans don't seem to. I want to interrupt you 1 second, filibuster Gene. I agree that they do have this multicultural aspect of their party that is petite bourgeois, but that aspect is also extremely racist.
You mean we're talking about the Republicans, just to be
These are the Republicans that might be brown but definitely hate immigrants. These are the Republicans.
Oh yeah, they're still racist,
black that definitely are can't stand underclass ideology. So
no
the
doubt.
racism. That's my point is they can't let go of that racism enough to get more people of color in. If they just stopped a little bit. Sorry.
When you're dealing with an electoral system which is so finely balanced that that comes down to just a few 100,000 people, if you can, let's say, bring in an extra 2, 3, 4% from the Latino community or from the Black community, very small numbers, that could completely decisively like tip the balance of power because it's so finely balanced.
Well, I mean, I think maybe a good example of what you're talking about, Jason, is maybe that North Carolina governor race, which I don't know how closely you followed it.
I was following it because my sports co-host lives in North Carolina.
Oh yeah,
it was closer than I thought it was going to be.
And it turned out, obviously everyone knows the Black Nazi comments, but like I think that is like an interesting bit there because I think there is a section of the Republican Party, that is trying and it thinks that there might be a path for them if they open up those doors. But I think that you're right that like that there is something inherent in the Republican Party that is too attached to if not outright like racial like hierarchy, creating, a system of like in and out, right? These groups of people are on the in group and those are on the out. That is kind of just sort of baked in to the popular Republican Party that you saw. I mean, yeah, the Madison Square Garden comments. That's from a moron, comedian. But he's sitting here and he's just saying, okay, this is what I think might play with this crowd. And it was interesting because I think they did realize that was a huge mistake. But I want to ask.
If they win, no. Looks like they might win the House.
Well,
and the Senate,
I'm
so
sorry.
it's like,
I think. And again, sometimes there's map issues here. Like I think the Senate was going to be a difficult climb for the Democratic Party in general. I think that one thing that I think is abundantly clear to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, that both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump ran really bad campaigns, right? I think Kamala Harris, after she became, the nominee, I was disgusted, and obviously, like we all, I know, are like in agreement of like the horrors of Gaza, and in a lot of ways, the Democratic Party dug their own grave with this kind of thing. But you're just like, okay, maybe they're going to be able to eke it out with this message of like anti-Trumpism. We're not going to go back. Tim Waltz, who we can talk about whether or not, we find him to be legit or not, but like he played a role that I think was fairly effective at the beginning, but they immediately pivoted to trying to win this Liz Cheney part of the country, right? This centrist part of the party. Oh, we're going to pick up all of these kind of Republicans. And again, we don't know how this is going to turn out yet. It still, I think, is like a coin toss at the end of the day. But it does matter, even if Kamala Harris wins, if the way that they win is, with this more suburban conservative strategy that they've been leaning into, instead of the one that it looked like they might have been running. And maybe to throw it to y'all on this, Left Merch in the chat has, how do y'all think Tim Waltz is affecting outcomes here, if at all? It does seem like he's might be more favorably viewed than Harris by much of the country. But I'll throw it to y'all to hear your thoughts there.
Do you think Joe Biden made Obama win? I guess that's how I'd answer your question.
I don't think people are voting for the vice president, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, probably Tim Waltz would have done better running as president. He might have been more
I don't know. I don't know if you'll know, but the Harris campaign was effectively, just inherited from the Biden campaign. And they, when Tim Waltz, first got picked got the VP knob, there was a lot of like favorable coverage of him. He was polling pretty high, and the Biden campaign said, "Hey, stop calling them weird, and start, giving more delivered and polished answers to questions instead of speaking off the cuff," which is so incredible for how much it reveals about those people's ability to do politics. Because again, those were the things that made him popular, right? Is that he spoke like a normal person, and he called them weird.
I mean, I think this is one of the fruits of the Trump revolution, is that Trump purged the Republican Party of the consultancy class. Now, obviously, once he's purged this consultancy class, it's replaced by morons and grifters. But where did these consultants all go? Well, they all go to the Democratic Party. And, whether it's directly or even indirectly through funding mechanisms or cultural transfer, a lot of these ideas are sort of coming together. And I think it shapes the way that, I think these campaigns are the way they are because that's who's staffing them, right? That's because they want them to be that way. They want to have a coalition. That is like the coalition they want to establish, the Morning Joe coalition. They want to have those moderate, quote unquote, moderate Republicans, militarists, they want to seize the kind of nationalist high ground and portray themselves as the patriotic party. And they don't do that by running to the left. They do that by running towards Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney is vastly more valuable to them in the politics that they want to achieve than someone like Bernie Sanders, who is just a kind of pain in the butt, an obstacle, and someone who brings annoying leftists into politics and into the Democratic Party. So it's the way it is because that's what they want, right?
Well, on that, I think that this is something that I'm sure we've all been talking about a lot over the past a few months. This is from Sensor Maria, who says, and thank you for the chat there. Says thoughts on Trump winning Michigan because Kamala and the DNC would not budge on Gaza. I mean, I'm curious what what y'all's thoughts are there, but for me, I think that it's a very likely possibility, and it's something that if you look at the polling. You look at one thing that would have helped Kamala Harris in all of these battleground states, but especially in Michigan, would be if they budged on their Gaza policy, and they refused to.
I mean, I guess the question for me would have been if Jill Stein or someone like that wins Michigan, then you can say that the Gaza policy didn't work for them. But Trump really doesn't give any Palestinians in Detroit a better option than Kamala Harris when it comes to less military funding.
I think that's more than fair, but I think that the point would be more that people are either abstaining, not voting, or voting third party.
It's going to come down to how close it is in the Michigan election. Mm-hmm. Now, you'll remember back, since you're old enough, David, that in 2016 we had to listen for like 5 years about how Jill Stein threw the election. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, with the Jill Stein vote, in general, in previous elections, my assumption is that this notion that the majority of people who vote for the Green Party would, but for the Green Party, vote for the Democratic Party is a problem. There is always, I would assume, a certain number of people who are regular Democratic Party voters who usually vote Democratic Party, who from time to time will deposit their protest vote into the Green Party. We see that in 2000. We see that in every election. But my point would be about that. In general, most of the people who are voting for the Green Party, they're people who would only vote for the Green Party. They wouldn't vote for the Democrat. They wouldn't vote, right? Like there's a silly assumption that every Green Party voter is a but for Democratic Party voter. No, some of them might actually be more likely to lean Republican if the Green Party option was away from them. Obviously you would need to have harder data to make that assumption. But, my general feeling is that. However, what I would say about this particular election, and in particular, because Michigan is one of these very central swing states, is that it is going to be a finely run election. So, the Republican Party has a shot of winning Michigan, which means that they're going to put money into Michigan, which means that the Democrats have to deploy money. So it becomes, as they say, the battleground state. And in any such contest of political power, again, it's not going to come down to huge gains and huge victories, but it's going to come down to very small swings in the vote. If you go back to the 1990s, for example, especially in the mid 1990s, when you had this kind of wave of professionalization, data, new forms of data collection and marketing coming into the political process in the United States, you had all these weird policies like they're going to have a button on the TV and the computer to stop bad games coming in. Well, why were they doing those things? Well, obviously they want the elections back then used to hinge on suburban mums in the Midwest, and that would be an important demographic. So they would often try and pander to that particular demographic. Now, again, we have a kind of similar, kind of finely balanced thing, but I think the Democratic Party has flubbed the action amongst Arab Americans. The real question is, though, how worth it was that trade-off? Did Democratic Party pollsters or apparatchiks say to themselves, well, actually, we don't care really either way about this Israel-Palestine thing, but if we start going too much, sounding too Republican, too pro-Palestinian, are we going to lose the Jewish vote? Are we going to lose Jewish votes in New York which won't matter in the presidential, but could lose us the House or could lose us the Senate here and there. So I think, again, people say this was a mistake. They made a mistake. Well, if they win, it's not a mistake. If they lose,
that's how I want to see. Like I understand how we think about this, but I think we don't think enough how regular people see the world, first and foremost, that aren't so plugged in. And we don't always know off the top of our head the demographics of an entire state. We know the demographics of Detroit, but there are other cities that have pretty decent sized populations within the state of Michigan that isn't Detroit, which actually has a declining population.
Okay,
So,
but I mean, I just like I'm sorry, but to push back a little bit, like I don't think that there's any way that somebody actually thought that getting somebody like Richie Torres, who probably isn't even very, very well known in New York,
okay, fair enough.
getting him to go out and get me. I mean, that seems like a little bit more than just like, hey, we're making kind of strategic decisions, and we might not like the decisions that they're making, but whatever. That felt like more of a promise to people outside of trying to make a pitch to voters, or maybe a pitch to certain kinds of establishments, or a way of doing politics, which I think is a big part of the Kamala Harris campaign, right? From when she was sort of developing who she was as a candidate, and how people were thinking about her. She was doing two things: one, like the public facing one, and the other one was the private one. This is why, like, if you read publications like the Financial Times, you're getting a completely different story about who Kamala Harris is than you're getting from a lot of like the national media, right? Because the Financial Times are like, oh, Kamala Harris has all these good friends in Wall Street, and in tech, and she's sort of maybe hinting, and members of her staff are hinting to large donors that maybe she'll get rid of Lena Khan at the FTC, right? Like, I think the Richie Torres strategy had a little bit more to do, not so much with this is going to get us so many votes, as much as it did to signal to certain kinds of institutional donors, and just to power brokers within the party and the country that they'll play ball.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. That this is like a strategic trade. So, okay, maybe the trade-off wasn't about potentially alienating pro-Israeli voters in certain parts. But there's certainly it seems a deliberate. Although I have to say, I think even the Richie Torres and the Clinton speech, that was clearly
that was a middle finger. I mean, I think, I mean, I don't know if you call it an error though. I'm saying, to me, I mean, and I'm trying to get my head around it because I found that to just be so unbelievable, right?
Well,
because why waste money on a plane ticket for somebody?
It was overkill. It was overkill for what they were trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think so.
So they perhaps miscalculated how much spice they needed to put in the soup. But
what's going on, David? Give us an update. What's going on?
I'm looking. We're still sort of where
is it going to be civil war tomorrow morning? Because I've got class.
You got class.
It's not. It's. I mean, it's from some of the things like New York Times. And again, like I want to talk to you all a little bit about the polls in just a minute. Just in general. But some of the stuff I'm seeing here is likely are in Georgia. North Carolina is looking likely Republican. These are all things that I think we had sort of accepted. I do think it's going to come down. Sorry, this is such a boring thing to say. It's going to come down to Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and to see whether or not they're able to pick up Nevada. Who knows? I mean, it could maybe change. The Iowa stuff looks like that was a one-off, that poll. But I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about the polling in general. I think that one thing going into this election that was so frustrating is, as y'all were saying, it's like, oh, remember, I don't know if we were saying this live or before. Remember when we used to have those presidential maps that were like all one color or close to one color here?
Right.
We've now live in a country where our politics, in particular presidential politics, are dominated by one thing only: polling. And that shapes the campaigns, it shapes the narratives, it shapes the way that everybody's engaging with politics. There was a time in American politics when it was like kind of seen as like controversial to be publishing polls that you had conducted in the first place, right? Because you're like constructing your own narrative, right? Instead of reporting on the facts. We have this like hyper reliance on polling in this country that I think really, really hurts our politics in a lot of ways. One, just our general understanding, but two, just the way that presidential and political campaigns are conducted.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the poll becomes the story now. You know, it's
Well,
all
also,
about.
I think it changes the way. I think it's when. I mean, this is one of those things. Like, is the chicken or the egg? But like, I also think it changes the way that like voters and people behave in politics too.
I mean, I'm sure there's research to demonstrate that. I'm sure that people. I mean, people always make political calculation. Oh, I mean, with today, the way polls are covered today, I guess as a useful intellectual exercise, we might think if they covered elections the way they do today, if polls were as central as they are today to the way news coverage is carried, would someone like Ross Perot have come so close, got such a large proportion of
He
the
was allowed to. He was allowed to be in those presidential debates, and he was a bigger figure. As a person that was alive when that happened and remembered Ross Perot, like he was even a pop culture figure at that time, and we haven't seen a third party candidate be taken that seriously as a candidate since.
It's true. Sorry, Jason. Just to like to re up what you're saying, I was fairly young. I mean, I don't know, barely conscious when he was
I think
running.
it was 92, right?
Yeah, but I'm doing research for a project of mine, and I was reading some old Texas books from like the 70s and stuff, and they had like a bunch of Ross Perot quotes in it. And like it took me a second to realize, like, oh yeah, this guy was famous for other things too, than just being that third party candidate. What are we looking at here, Jason? What are we seeing?
This is the map of the Electoral College right now, and the states that are solid are the states that people won, right? And the states that are shaded a lighter color are the ones that they are leading in. And it looks like Trump is leading in Michigan, but Kamala is now leading in Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michigan is going to kind of teeter for a long time. I think Virginia, if she were to lose Virginia, that'd be a huge upset for the Harris campaign, right? I mean, is
Pennsylvania still up there? Can you see? Because I can't see.
Yes, I can. Sorry, Pennsylvania is still up there, and it's on that map is a lean. We're seeing a bunch. I think that's
Trump is winning Pennsylvania. Oh no.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you one thing.
Dun, dun, dun.
One thing that's so funny is like you want to turn me into like a wine mom, resistance mom. You put up a photograph of Elon Musk and Donald Trump together, and that shit scares the hell out of me. I mean, like obviously, I'm very worried about a Trump presidency for a lot of reasons. But thinking about this guy, I mean, it's like literally, and I think that this is a real failure of the goddamn Kamala Harris campaign. Our friends at the Center for Working Class Politics, they published a really great report in Jacobin today. They've been doing really great reporting on, like studies of like the electorate that are different from the traditional whole we poll. Do you like Kamala? Do you like Trump? But actually testing different kinds of messages with different voters, right? Which is something that I think is very helpful for doing what we're trying to do now, is imagining what a different kind of politics would look like. And it's just no doubt about it. One thing that worked, particularly with these voters in Pennsylvania that are going to be the ones who seem to be the key voters, one thing people really liked is when you started talking about corruption and oligarchy and a strong populist message. And the thing is that with fucking Donald Trump, who's famous for being a rich bloated billionaire, and now aligning himself with Elon Musk, one of the wealthiest people of the world, he's always flip-flopping in and out there. The case to make to the everyday people is, these folks do not have your interests at heart. These are the elite. These are the silver spoon in America, and we're coming for them. We think that, working people deserve a better future. They deserve more say in their society and their politics. And they ran away from that. Now, again, could Kamala Harris effectively deliver that message?
Probably not.
But I think that even an inauthentic version of that message from the Kamala Harris campaign would go a hell of a lot further than country over party bullshit.
But that's your entryway into talking to right wingers, right? Like I was talking to a Trump supporter the other day at the bar, and once I started mentioning like the idea of corruption, his ears perked up, and he wanted to read like my pieces in Damage. You know what I'm saying? So there's something to be said about how every American really believes that all the politicians are corrupt. It's not as bad as it is here where I live in Mexico, where corruption is just such a given that even when people aren't corrupt, they still look at it as corruption. For example, I was talking to a young man about how he felt about Claudia Sheinbaum. And he's like, oh, well, she she's corrupt, but not as bad as the others. And I was like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, well, she has more loyalty to her party. And I was like, well, isn't that what someone is going to do that's part of a political party?
Well,
Like,
that was an amazing thing in the American press too. I mean, but that's a whole other conversation. No, I mean,
it's so baked into the way I think most people see politics at this point,
mhm.
but people still want someone to fix all the problems,
Yeah, yeah. And I mean,
which is like, what?
no, I mean, this is the thing that is, so frustrating about this moment is that like it seems like a lot of the energy of like if you need it, a lot of the energy for like if about like how can we deal with like the failure of the American government to. I mean, look at something like I've been wondering how like the hurricane is going to affect this election. Right, it's
Mm.
very hard to tell.
Mhm.
Because I talked to some friends out in Western North Carolina. And I had a friend text me the other day. It's like I took a hot shower. And it's like the first time I've been able to do that in a long while. And you wonder how that is going to play with those voters, right? Because there's no doubt about it that the ability of the United States government to respond adequately to a problem like that is way below what it should be in the wealthiest country in the world. Um, and the question is who's able to harness that kind of frustration. And for some reason, the Democrats, and I can get why, because I think that like one thing that is really important to know, and I think for most people who came out of like the Bernie Sanders moment and things like that, it's kind of common sense to us at this point. But like Obama and how popular Obama was, and how excited people were about Obama when he first got elected, that only baked in more and more cynicism into
Yeah.
politics as being something that can improve your life, right? And there's a huge advantage that Trump has because he's not associated with that, and it's hard. It's the thing that's difficult about Trump, and I'll just admit this, and maybe I'm a little a lib soy boy or whatever. But it's just that Trump really has like should not have 2 feet to stand on, on like effective government and not being corrupt and all this kind of stuff. But it seems
But
like
how many
some of these
people have
things are
you
able to wash off of him. Yeah, I know.
But how many people have you heard say he's a businessman?
Yeah,
Again,
yeah,
someone
yeah.
told me to my face, well, he's a businessman. Don't you? America's a business. No, it's not. But okay, tell me more.
No, I was even with people who don't vote for him. I was reading in a Texas Tribune. They are interviewing voters in the line, and one person was like, I was really close to voting for Trump because he's such a great businessman. But I decided abortion is what swung me at the end of the day. But it is funny that like even for non-Trump voters, there's people out there who are like, you know what, he's really great at business.
He's a simulacrum of a businessman. He's like
Oof.
he plays a
Oof.
businessman on television.
High five,
In
Gene.
high five. There we go. But we live in stupid times, so none of this is particularly surprising. Nobody's running on anything really.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And Trump we're gonna have Trump in the morning, and it's gonna be 4 more years of.
Why are you so certain? I'm not there yet. I will say, but that's how you're feeling. I mean, I'm feeling bad. I'm feeling very worried. It doesn't look good
It's
to me.
210 Trump, 111.
I mean, I don't
Harris.
know why everyone's feeling bad because I've kind of been assuming Trump's gonna win because like.
I mean, I had assumed Trump was going to win up until Kamala came in. I mean, I had assumed back.
Well, I mean, like Kamala she could still win, but like, do we not remember that her campaign wasn't very good last time? Like in 2020, she didn't do very well, and people will put it down to like authenticity or this, that, the other, all these kind of sexist tropes. But the real problem is like we know what Kamala's about. Kamala's is like everybody else in the political class. She's like an overachiever. She's a nerd, but we live in an age where you can't, there's no nerds and jocks. So she's also like cool and everything, and people resent that. She's too well put together. She's the id of the American professional managerial class. She's what. And people don't like that class. It's not about her.
Mm-hmm.
It's like people are sick of these kind of experts running everything, these smart Alex and stuff like that. People love to be the rebel, right? And
it's very true. Did Trump just win Iowa?
I can check, but it looks like he did. It was looking like he was going to. Yeah, they called it. They called it. I mean, I think that poll that everyone's excited about seemed to have been a one-off. You know, and yeah, I think that would have made it a lot easier for her, particularly with how bad she's doing in the South.
Just get obliterated in the South, man. Dude, get rid. It's gonna be awful. It's gonna be awful.
It looks like he's winning Wisconsin too, dude.
I know he's gonna. I'll tell you why it's gonna be awful, because we're gonna have to listen to all this like resistance lib stuff again, and it's gonna.
Hey, Arizona's really close, Gene. Look,
and
hold
it's gonna
on.
be horrible. It's gonna be horrible policies, and incompetence, and something terrible is gonna happen.
Georgia's not over. North Carolina's. These are really close. I didn't realize how close they all were. I thought these were like blowouts.
Well,
no, all the ones that she's losing they're really close.
Yeah, but I mean, people know this better than I do who are watching closely. A lot of the signals are looking bad in Georgia and North Carolina about her being able to make up the difference. Yeah, and I think that sorry everyone. I wish this would have been the champagne room. I mean, we could still have fun. And we're toasting to something. Not that the thing that's sad about this night too is that it's not like a Kamala Harris victory really puts us on sure footing for a better future.
Nothing.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, like,
at the same time, I think another Trump presidency is going to be, if it happens, is going to be very disastrous for this country.
Yes.
Particularly given the state of the opposition, and I'm not just talking about the Democratic Party. I mean, one of the things that, if you want to talk about any kind of silver lining for the Trump presidency, was that it opened up, or felt like it opened up some doors to the left. And, we can litigate how effective the left was at taking advantage of that and building sustainable movements from it. But there was a lot of, I find it's going to be very difficult. And I think we have to, if you believe in a better world, you have to be able to fight. You can't just give up because you're down. But I mean, it could be very, very dark and bleak with the left right now, that I find to be very ineffective in this country, very divided, very unclear about what its goals even are at this point.
Don't you want to, instead of worrying about that, why don't we get on Twitter and see who was the goody, Trotsky or Stalin? That's what it's all about now.
Well, I mean, I almost missed those debates. Now it's who's the best YouTube commentator and who's the best YouTube commentator.
God.
At least like goofy, commie LARPing was aspirational too.
It's you know what's sad, man. I think with Trump, and I think another thing that's going to happen is the repression of protesters.
I mean, really, look here. I mean, what happened in Austin was so frightening. I mean, watching the way that they came for those kids here in Austin was something else. But it wasn't just red states. I mean, that was in New York too.
It was everywhere.
But I think our good friend Branko Marcetic has a really great piece in Jacobin that he published just the other day on Sunday or Saturday about Trump really is actually kind of fixated on crushing the left as it exists right now. And has been talking a pretty serious game about coming after so-called subversives and communists in the United States. And I don't think it's out of the question to see, severe attacks on people's just basic civil liberties in this country. And the worst thing about it has been we've had 4 years. We've had a lot of time of a lot of liberals sort of giving ground on questions of like censorship and freedom of speech and things like that, where even a lot of leftists don't hold that as a core value of theirs.
Well, what do you think of Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter? That seems like that was a beautiful political maneuver to be able to like control certain political conversations in that space where everybody was bitching about it and they were all going to leave and go to all these other sites. Nobody left. Everybody's still there. And it's still controlling a bit of a media narrative.
I mean, it's a massive media narrative, particularly just knowing how much, journalists and kind of influential folks spend their time on that website. Yeah.
No, I thought that might be one of the more brilliant moves of this campaign to like, hey, I'll take over this space, which is primarily a lefty space. I'll take it over. We don't have to go to Rumble. We can bring our hate to Twitter.
Get ready for Elon. I think the Trump presidency is still gonna have some issues because I don't think the Republican Party really like Trump that much. Like
I
I think
agree.
they all kind of really hate him. It's not really a policy
agree.
thing. It's like he's like a difficult person to work with. The things that make him successful are also the things that make him like very difficult for the Republican Party to manage and control and work with. It's not like he has a sophisticated agenda. I mean, this is why the whole fascism debate that people get mad at, it kind of misses the point that Trump doesn't have any kind of doesn't seem to have any kind of coherent vision beyond getting himself out of like jail, right? Um, but like ultimately, he's going to be all over the place, and I just don't think I don't know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it's been a cakewalk. I mean, like people go, well, it's going to get bad in terms of foreign affairs or in terms. It's like, well, what the heck? We've been watching all this stuff in Gaza for the last year, right? Trump might actually stop that because maybe one of the things that Netanyahu's doing is like, trying to.
I don't know. I mean, I think Trump wants to pour gasoline on that conflict.
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, like maybe not, but it's a theoretical debate, right? A lot of bad things have happened over the last 5 years, and people catastrophize,
including the genocide in Gaza, no doubt about it, right?
But people catastrophizing. New York.
Wow, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna give Sune a virtual bump. I don't know how that works, but it's adorable.
I mean, the thing is really frustrating about this, and again, we don't know the final yet. It's looking like these results. This is very much the polar opposite of 22, right? Then I think that it's difficult to adjudicate right now, and we're all doing rank punditry. We're talking about things live as they go down. But I wonder if there was a kind of ease that the Democrats had about abortion being something that was going to be able to carry their political movement as an issue. And I think there's no doubt about it that it was hyper motivating to certain groups of people, and it's an absolutely critical issue. But it's one of those things that's like Americans are inundated with so much horror on a regular basis that the memory can get a little short. For folks. I mean, we've been living with this abortion ban in Texas, and it's been devastating. And you just hear story after story after story about, the horrors that are happening to mothers, people who want to have children, even who are just not able to get health care. But it's one of those things that's like, how effective is this movement and this party, the Democratic Party, at being able to translate very visceral things like that into political activity and political action? And right now, I mean, if these results hold, if what we're seeing, it seems like they weren't able to take something that, when you talk to most people, when you look at polling on the issue, particularly that one issue, that most people don't want, these kind of bans, that they weren't able to translate that into support for their political program. And that's a failure of the Democratic Party. If they're not,
I think you're right. I think for a lot of Americans, it was kind of out of sight, out of mind, especially for people that live on the coast, because that's not really an issue for you. But I think there's been a couple of deaths in Texas, even for women that needed, was it ectopic pregnancies?
I'm not that's I mean, people just not even being able to get health care because doctors are afraid to provide it, right? Because they're even normal procedures, they're afraid that they might get in trouble because it's not clear what the law is, right? It's not very clear.
Right. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
That's insane.
Everybody, all the pro-life people are like, well, use your common sense. It's like, well, that's not how law works.
Yeah.
Law isn't about use your common sense. Law has, law is very sticky.
Distinct rules, and no one wants to go to prison for common sense.
So can I talk to you all a little bit about Texas in the Senate race, because it's really
Yeah.
it's really insane.
The
That
state
Senate guy's
Senate
been
or
asking
the
for money.
The Senate race between Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. So Colin Allred
Okay.
found a way to run a fucking political campaign where he made being a football player uncool, which is a real achievement in the state of Texas, right? Ted, there was a moment he had a good line with him in the debate. He said the only position that Ted Cruz has ever played is left out, which is a good line. But other than that, that was like the only good barb, that he was able to get on Cruz, because Allred did what I think the Democratic Party's kind of like reflex position is. Whenever they go up against somebody like that, Beto was unique because Beto sort of ran, not to the Bernie Sanders full progressive left, but he ran a more progressive camp, certainly than Allred, right? And Allred ran this kind of right wing campaign, right, where he was like, "Hey, Ted Cruz says that he wants to be tough on the border. I'm actually going to be tougher." Right? Ted Cruz hammered him on trans stuff constantly, and Colin Allred effectively ran and he says different things to different people, but his commercials were, "Hey, I don't believe any of that weird stuff that Ted Cruz is saying about me," right? Now, of course, Ted Cruz is telling, wild ass stories, but it's one of those things where like you're not owning this issue, right? And you're playing into this kind of trap. But the worst thing about it was Colin Allred brought in so much fucking money into the state. And it was very clear a kind of get rich quick scheme for a lot of Democratic Party consultants in the state. Colin
That's what it
Allred,
always comes down to, right?
100%. I try to remind our audience about this, right? That that these campaigns they operate under different logics, right? There is like, yes, they want to win, right? But also like you don't win, you make a lot of money too, right? And these people have a vested in, particularly the Democratic Party in the state has a vested interest in sort of keeping certain people out of politics. Colin Allred, they put the thumb on the scale for him in the Democratic Party primary in the state. So there wasn't really an effective primary. We had all those kind of AstroTurf young kids for Colin Allred, people who I'm sure people have seen on Twitter. But here's one thing that was so insane about the Colin Allred campaign is that he was running basically a sleeper campaign. He was not campaigning. He was not doing big rallies in a state that was supposed to be the battleground state, or like a place where you can really make the argument about particularly the horrors of the Republican abortion ban. And they weren't doing big rallies or anything like that. Nothing compared to what Beto O'Rourke was doing. And y'all want to know something unfucking believable that they did?
What?
I believe it was Texas Monthly. I could be wrong. It could have been Texas Tribune. But they put out a story maybe in August or September saying like, "Hey, there's like the most expensive Senate race ever happening in this state, and we're sort of wondering where the campaign is because we haven't seen anything. What's going on, right?" And they ran this story that, look, I'm sorry, I'm not accusing any of the journalists here, but the journalism in Texas, just like a lot of other places, the major ones, it does have a kind of like left liberal bias, right, or inclination. And they ran the most fair piece you could ever run about Colin Allred. It's like, hey, some people think this is a bad strategy, but here's some arguments for maybe why it's a good strategy. And we had the executive fucking director of the Texas Democratic Party personally attacking the journalist who wrote this and saying these publications shouldn't be publishing lies about a campaign. Again, this is like the most fair piece that it could be written about you, trying to give you some credit for what.
And they got mad about it.
And they attacked it. And that's just not a party that's serious about winning in my book.
Yeah, I think it comes back to this thing from about the consultancy class, like the Trump people like threw out that whole consultancy class. I'm sure there are many ex-Republican consultants who are now taking the Democratic Party dime and who work for consultancy agencies, perhaps have worked for Republicans in the past. And this is an opportunity. I've heard this before as well, that, Texas is a huge media market. It's like a big state. How many people live there? Like,
over 30.
Over 30 million people living in one state.
It's expensive to run ads and stuff,
it's
right?
Expensive. So I'm sure they're probably feeding their friends. Are they not? Like there's a revolving door between business and the political class. So yeah, every time, ever since the Beto O'Rourke campaign, every time I see fundraising efforts related to Texas, I just assume that it's a grift, that like they're just sucking in all this money in a vein. I mean, I'm sure there are people who are believers who
There's
believe,
lots of people who are
who
fighting, but
believe.
there are people who are the people who believe in fighting. Look, and that's like I'm not a member of the Democratic Party, right? Like I'm a socialist. I believe in a different kind of politics. But I have a lot of friends who are
Mhm.
progressives and are very active in this kind of stuff, and they have to deal with so much of a hurdle to engage them in politics, right? To let them sort of train up new talent, new capabilities, new folks, because like there are parts of the state that are like safe. I mean, like look, the major urban areas, right,
Yeah.
are solidly Democrat. Now, here's the thing: is the Republican Party knows that, and that's why they've passed things like the Death Star bill, which effectively is barring local governments from being able to pass laws or regulations. So we don't get local democracy in Texas anymore. The Republican Party that runs the state legislature now gets to rule supreme over
Jesus.
that kind of thing. It's really, really damning. And to not sit here and see the losses that we're seeing, despite the amount of money and I think seriously, Ted Cruz, I think, is actually an exceptionally beatable candidate. Right? I mean, Beto O'Rourke came really damn close to knocking him out the
Mhm.
first time, and I mean, I'm going to look at these numbers here, but we'll have to see if the final
I
results
mean, it
look
looks
like
like the
he even
Dems are going to
outperformed
lose
him.
the. It looks like the Dems are going to. Oh, Harris 179, Trump 214.
Wow.
California and Washington just came in. Dun, 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 dun. You know why I want Harris to win, right, David?
Why?
Because when I predicted that she would win a long time ago,
Oh yeah.
everybody thought I was full of shit. So I said, okay, if I'm right, you guys owe me McDonald's. And
Damn it! They
if
got that
the
new
if
chicken Big Mac or whatever.
I'm afraid of the chicken Big Mac because that just looks like a problem for my colon. But um, I will cross the border tomorrow if Harris wins to get my free McDonald's from all
I
these
mean, look,
gross.
I want people like Elon Musk as far away from government as possible. So, I hope that might be a possibility. It's
Dude, when I saw that, I was like, oh, here she comes. Here she comes.
Are you ready?
Dun,
I
dun, dun,
mean,
dun, dun, dun,
perhaps Joe
dun,
Rogan is winning
dun.
it for Trump.
you
Did you
what?
say Joe Rogan's winning it for Trump? Oh
The
no,
Joe Rogan?
Gene paused.
Oh, we lost Eugene. I'm gonna.
You lost Gene.
He'll get.
See, KM, get that. That look, man. I got to get this fast food, David Griscom. That's the.
Hey, man, let's go for it. I mean, I just
You know,
it just man, this makes me so fucking mad. It just like, I mean, the thing of the matter, and I got you back in here, Gene. The thing of the matter is that, like, again, I don't think that Donald Trump represents some like unbeatable political force. I really
Mm-mm.
think that if the results look like they are, and Trump wins again, which is just such again like a horrifying thought. Um, it is a race that is lost by the Democrats. It doesn't mean that Trump represents some kind of like undeniable, unbeatable political force. I think he's exceptionally weak, and I think because of his weakness, the Democratic Party, really thought that they could win the election on their own terms. And this is something that I've been saying for a while. It's like they want to
Mm-hmm.
win in a certain way with a certain group of
Mm-hmm.
people because they don't want to be beholden to having to do, hell, not even the big things that we might want to see, like healthcare or anything like that. But they don't want to be on the hook for these major policies. That's why we got these kind of, I mean, the Harris campaign, we could talk about how disappointing Joe Biden is. I didn't have high expectations for him. But there was no doubt about it that a Kamala Harris presidency was going to be worse than a Biden presidency by a lot of metrics.
mhm.
I think it would have been more hostile to unions. I don't think that there was going to be the same kind of ambition to pass things like, the IRA is flawed as it is. The thing with Biden was like, oh, he's spending money and doing something, which is something that the United States government very rarely does. And the fear with Harris is that she was going to win with her victories, that she wasn't going to have that same kind of onus um, to do that. And I think that she tried to run a campaign to sort of allow her to not have those kind of expectations or responsibilities from the electorate to run on a kind of more progressive um, have a more progressive programmatic.
She doesn't have a signature policy that she's been touting, right?
You don't think the what is it, how much money is it for first time owners that being tested?
Oh, with the tax cut or black guys,
the down payment. Yeah. Oh my God, the fucking black guys for crypto. I mean, this was such, I mean, honestly, that was such a moment, I think, of this campaign, is when they were like, hey, what if we micro target like every group with, very specific policies, and all the policies are effectively things like, we'll give you some jobs training, and like we'll invest in small business and crypto for some reason, which was an insane pivot.
You people like
you could win if she would have been against crypto. I mean, she would have won. She would have won every electoral vote.
When I saw that, I was like, they're just like one press conference away from offering the watermelon and fried chicken subsidy, like a pack of Newports for every black man in the Newport. I mean, I was shocked. I was shocked about how like cravenly like black people like crypto and what.
By the way, Arizona is 2.2 percentage points away from being tied up. So, Gene, I can smell the McDonald's now. I can smell those fries.
Jason, I love you. You are like a like a rainbow, or like some sunshine in this fucking dark evening, man. I mean, I want it.
I mean, it's dark whoever wins. So
it is dark, because you know what's dark if Kamala Harris wins. Like, the real dark part about that is that all the 8 years. We have to think about this. All the George Floyd shit didn't mean anything, because nothing happened. Nothing changed. Everybody got their George Floyd money and shut the fuck up. All that Oscars so white bullshit that happened because no Negro movies or actors were nominated. All that shit stopped, even though the conditions didn't change, right? All the protests for Palestine, all the shit people want to do. If she wins, it means no one cares.
Yeah, but if she loses,
that's the blow to the left. That's the blow to the left that I think the left can't. This iteration is having a hard time to recuperate from these kind of political losses, because they're putting all their eggs in this political basket for some reason. Because there's a massive disconnect with the working class, because it's not the working class you've been reading about. This isn't guys in factories with dirt smudged faces anymore. These are Uber drivers. These are fast food workers. These are truck drivers that are also, finding themselves facing housing insecurity as well.
But they made a fucking choice. The thing is, like, I mean, I hear you on that, but also, like, they were losing both of those working classes, right? They were losing the hard hat working class, and they were losing, the new kind of tech serf class, right? And like, this is the thing that I think is so damning about the Biden presidency and the Kamala Harris campaign, is that they basically continued the trend of the Democratic Party taking two big middle fingers up, which is the working class, and that's with fucking organized labor, like people like Sean Fain, right? Who I think is a very exciting leader in a lot of ways, and that might be where we have to put a lot of our hope here. But like, that's even with him going all out, trying to support them. And they didn't even incorporate him, I think, effectively into their fucking campaign. And that is just, again, political malpractice. That is political malpractice to not have somebody like Sean Fain, headlining, not just like invited to speak. I mean, his speech at the his speech at the DNC, was such a breath of fresh air compared to everything else that you were seeing from that party, and not seeing him have a more central role in this campaign, I think, is, again, very disastrous for her, and again shows that they take these voters for granted.
Because we're going to see whoever gets in office too. I think we're going to see an austerity candidate. Because there is a bit of working class frustration to the point where people want to form unions, but it's hard to form unions in fast food places, as we've been seeing. It's a little easier with Starbucks than it is in McDonald's.
Yeah, and I mean, like, these things have taken, like, people have been trying to come up with different strategies, but even there, it's like, you look at Amazon union efforts, right? And you need,
Yeah.
but you need to either, have, it's one of those things. It's like, you could talk about these things. It's like, some things are simple to explain but difficult to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, I could tell you
Yeah.
how to yeah, I mean, and winning, unions and reviving the union movement is something that left us all, oh, we got to revive the union movement, we have to revive the union movement. It's like, oh yeah, it's difficult. Right. Like, everyone knows that. And you need to either have like a very strong militant labor movement that's able to overcome the obstacles in front of it, or you need to have a federal government that has some teeth and is pushing back against these companies that are flaunting labor law, like Amazon has been doing, over the past years.
War criminals, Amazon. Yeah, I mean, it's very grim. It's very different.
No, but it is grim. It is grim. Whoever wins is very grim. I don't think labor gets any relief off whoever's in office, because I'm from a state like California that's a right to work state that's been, hammering incessantly at labor law, what's an employee and what's not an employee. And again, as more and more people are kind of forced into extra jobs just to survive, like if we have more teachers that have to, drive Uber and DoorDash just to try to, make rent, what's happening with education from that standpoint, that's another problem we have. Also, I think both of these candidates, regardless of who wins, one might be a little worse than the other when it comes to being tough on crime. It's not saying much, is that we're seeing more and more states repeal any positive movement we've had since the 2000s on tough on crime laws. And it feels like you have the Supreme Court. So people forget this. When the 94 Omnibus Crime Bill was rolled out initially, 3 strikes you're out was on a federal level. The Supreme Court strikes that down. California adopts it. You have a Supreme Court right now that probably would be like, you know what? They were wrong. And we do need a tougher thing like 3 strikes you're out, because we're seeing all these repeat offenders. Another thing you're seeing in California when it comes to tough on crime, they're changing the law of what grand larceny is, so you can get locked up for these kind of smash and grab robberies that we're seeing so much on the news sites. So if we thought filling up the jails didn't work 30 years ago, I don't know why we think filling up the jails is going to work again now.
I totally agree. Sorry. The dogs went quiet and now Gene's eating.
The dogs are by me, actually. They're not in Missouri. There's 2 boxers.
I hadn't had my evening repast, so I brought it out.
Oh man, it sucks, dude.
No, it's
it doesn't help that the Democrats say stuff all the time like, well, this, you think the economy's shitty, but you don't know, because
that was the word. Yeah. So I keep going.
Saying it today on MSLSD.
Yeah, and it's sad, and like, it's crazy how much I think a lot of them genuinely seem to like hate politics. Like, for all the talk, people on the left always love to talk about like the West Wing obsession of these folks, but like they don't like politics in like the popular sense. Like, they like politics. Politics to them means mimicking their opponents in such an effective way that it like disarms them, right? That's what is exciting politics for Democratic staffers and advisors, not like actual politics, which is running on popular things that people like and are going to support you for.
Politics has turned from being kind of an engagement with civil society into a career advancement opportunity, where you kind of make connections, and it's like you go up the greasy chain. It's a professionalized thing. You don't go into politics because I believe in everything, right? Or you have an ideology. I mean, you can tell these people don't. Their notion of politics is inherently just about management and nihilism, because like they go work for one, they'll work for a Republican, they'll work for. Look at that lady, Simone Sanders, right? She starts off in Bernie's campaign, and then boom, next thing you know, she's on the Biden campaign against Bernie, and then she's a spokesman for them, and now she has her own show on MSLSD, right? It's just a career trajectory. You know, they
Yeah.
believe nothing.
Yeah, I mean, just NB1 says, so if the Dems lost the vibes seem to be we lost. We don't know for sure, and I don't want to start saying it's done before it's done. But a lot of the early indicators have been pretty rough. Just looking at the most recent stuff, I mean, it's looking like the South got swept other than Virginia. Um, Pennsylvania's not looking. Pennsylvania is going to be a mystery for a while, but it's Trump's got a lead there, lead in Michigan,
Yep,
lead
he's
in
got a good lead.
Wisconsin, lead in Arizona, um, lead in Wisconsin. So
The lead in Wisconsin is
those
close.
those all need to flip pretty dramatically
Yeah, Minnesota's a blowout right now.
for Kamala, right?
Trump
Yeah,
is winning Minnesota.
I don't
It
think he's
looks like
winning Minnesota. I
yeah,
think
it says Trump is winning 60%. Am I reading this wrong?
Yeah, but I think that's just the vote. You got to look at the smart ones where they give you the little lean, because it's like
Oh,
14% of the vote. It's only 14% of the votes in there, right? So the prediction there's still a lead for the Dems. But I don't know. I mean, look, I could be wrong, Jason. I'm just saying what I'm seeing on my
hey,
computer.
I would
And you're
love
saying what you
to
on
not
your
win.
computer. So
I'm looking at this because I'm gonna once I get off with you guys, I'm gonna close my computer
and
and
go to
I'm not
bed.
gonna open it.
Yeah, that's
No, I'm
probably a
not
smart
gonna.
move.
I have somewhere to go, but it's not gonna be with anyone that knows anyone or anything about. They don't speak English,
Well,
so I'm gonna go hang out and speak extremely horrible
I
Spanish.
love it. I love
Stumble all over the place.
it. Oh man, I might need to be stumbling. I know I was like, I mean, it's so frustrating too because a lot of people just beyond how this looks just on a personal level. The hope was that it wasn't going to be too clear tonight, and we were just going to come on and riff for a couple hours and get back to it in the morning. I wasn't prepared to have to look at the abyss this evening, but I appreciate y'all keeping me company. Through that.
It's hey, remember, it's not over. I would love to wake up and
Well,
text Touré Reed and tell him you owe me my McDonald's.
oh, is that who?
That's one of the people. Yeah.
I mean,
So,
I think no, it's true. At the end of the day, the reality is still the same. The reality is still the same. That regardless, like there was no working class candidate on the ballot for president. There wasn't a working class agenda. That's the politics that needs to happen in this country, and that's one we have to fight for. And we have to be able to fight for it regardless of the conditions, right? And this is like where I get, when people call me starry eyed, but it's true. Is that like you have to be willing to fight and you have to be able to react
yes.
to all these difficult things, and it sucks. This sucks, but that's fucking life. You know what I mean? It's like you get bucked, you got to get fucking back on. And if anything, if this can, if we can use this as an opportunity to re-inspire, a more militant and disciplined fucking left, because I can't like the past 4 years, I think for the left in this country, like the real left, it's been disillusionment, right? I think a lot of people have fallen back out of politics who were engaged in politics 4 or 5 years ago. I think it's been a lot of confusion and a shitload of complacency. I think there was a lot of
Yeah.
people who got
Yeah.
brought into the Bernie Sanders movement. Let's just talk about that, right? You know,
Yeah.
there were a few different sections. There were people who were socialists, and they saw this as a good avenue and vehicle to build socialist politics, socialist alternative in this country. Then there was also like a lot of what I'll call soft progressives, right? Elizabeth Warren people who knows Bernie Sanders, but Elizabeth Warren's got plans, people, right? And the Biden presidency, I think, really drove those camps apart, right? And maybe that was a
Mm,
clarifying thing. But you could see a lot of people, they didn't like being on like being on the Bernie Sanders side meant you were sort of on the outside, right?
yeah.
And a lot of people wanted to sort of be professionalized again and be welcomed back into the Democratic Party events and stuff like that. And I think that it led to a lot of disillusionment. I think it led to a lot of short-term thinking on our movement. I mean, these past 4 years
Yes.
should have been really militant for the elected officials associated with the Democratic Socialist movement. It wasn't. I think that we can get into the reasons why, but there's no doubt about it that that's what happened in my mind.
I mean, we've all had our private conversations about this that I don't want to get into. But we did a stream last night, and Varn was going off on DSA numbers and this, that, and the third, and he was very preachy. Did you watch any of that, Gene?
No.
You were invited to the show and you didn't come.
Well, I was in the office working because some
No,
people
you
have
weren't.
jobs.
Yeah. Oh wow. You want me to go to Missouri and shake the shit out of you, don't you?
Yeah.
Censor Maria says, Dave, have you looked into the abyss? And the abyss has looked back. The abyss has been
Look,
looking
you
me
want to look
in
at
the
the
fucking
abyss,
eyes.
get ready for Laura Loomer in the White
bad
House.
news. Bad news. Trump is up 230 to 179. Trump wins North Carolina.
Again, yeah. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we had sort of accepted the Southern sweep, and the fact that he's pulling those away, that those are sort of closing, and now the results in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are looking bad. I mean, the path is getting.
Okay, let's look at this. Let's. I'm going to share something on the screen before I go, and it's the magical chart thing that says these are the ways that they have to win. So can you see it on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so if Harris wins Arizona, and Trump's going to win Georgia, and if Harris wins Maine and Michigan and Nebraska and Nevada and New Hampshire, she might win Pennsylvania. Looks like she's winning Virginia. Then Harris would win. There you go. Then you can feel better.
All right. I mean, look, maybe. I mean, it's going to come. I mean, again, this is like what people have been saying forever. Like Michigan is going to be really tight. That's going to matter a lot.
It's going to be a very terrible period of history. Just get ready for it.
I think
we're going to watch Laura Loomer desecrate the White House.
Well, that's okay. That's okay.
Do you think Melania and Laura Loomer have like an understanding so that like Trump no longer, like Melania doesn't have to
You really think Donald Trump is hitting that woman? I just don't. Ugh. You think it's just old age, and you know how old dudes be looking at you like, really, Paul? That's what you want? Okay.
I think he might be. I think he might be doing that.
Over Melania?
Well, maybe Melania doesn't play ball anymore, and so Melania has outsourced that particular part of their relationship to Laura Loomer. I think this is a much better topic to talk about. This is the future royal family. I'm just saying that's my theory.
So I mean,
if that's the case, then Trump he's lost a much bigger election.
Well, here's what if God damn it, I hate that we're at this point, but here's what we need to do is we need to support the split within the Trump movement right now. And Laura Loomer has been coming at RFK all day on Twitter. I don't know if y'all have seen this.
Oh, why is she mad at RFK? What's
well, I mean, I've been saying this on Left Right for a little while. All of these new people have been very, very unfair to Trump. They have been very disloyal, right? We have Elon Musk, who's wearing his own fucking clothing, right? He's not wearing the red Trump hat. He thinks he's better than Trump. He doesn't want to wear the red hat. He has to wear his own special fucking hat. You got RFK. Hat. RFK has got his own hat. Not only that, but he's made his own fucking slogan, the Maha thing, right? And Laura Loomer has been attacking RFK because RFK is continuing to fundraise, but making it seem because people understandably associate RFK with Trump now are like, oh yeah, that money's going to to get Donald Trump elected. No, it's going to help out RFK and his campaign debts that he racked up when he was running in the Democratic Party primary. So what we have to do is we need to drive a wedge between RFK, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, and Donald Trump, and that might be the most.
Kamala, Oregon just came in for Kamala. She's 187 to 230. Dun, 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 dun.
It's pretty good, guys.
I need whatever you're on, man.
Fucking, I'm on living in Mexico.
Oh, man.
You can't see it because this camera sucks, but it's really beautiful tonight, and you can kind of see the moon.
I could hear the water
shimmying off the ocean. Yeah, that's how close I am.
Man, maybe I'll come down there and
hang
out.
Hang out.
and Comrade Scheinbaum's free republic. I've been saying, we're very sorry, Claudia. We're sorry, Claudia. We were wrong. We never should have left the home country. I will help you retake the rightful
Retake
territory of
Texas.
Tejas and Kohia. So we can rebuild and make amends. We're ready. We're welcome. That call is official. I'm putting out here now. I'm your loyal foot soldier.
You should come out here. You know who's coming out here is are you cool with the Bunga guys?
I love the Bunga guys. I think I love them.
The Banga Boys.
Yeah, they're
we've had Alex on a bunch of times.
Alex is coming out here. Yeah, Rosarito Beach, Sensoria. I live near Rosarito Beach. No fast food for Jay. Hey, fucking. I have to go all the way to the States for fast food, dude. Think about that. But that means that the food here is so much better. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bail and go get some of it.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Bosh, Jeannie.
I'm here. I'm just trying to have my dinner because I've been busy with the children all day. But
peace out, Gene.
It's been beautiful.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thank you so much,
David
Jason.
Griscom. No, thank you for reaching out to me. And I miss you in real life. I haven't seen you in forever.
I know. Come by here. If you're allowed back.
Yeah, we'll see. Do you know what my son asked me, Jason Miles? Do you know what Zala asked me?
What did he say? What?
He said he asked me, "Is Father Christmas real?" I was like, "No, he's not real." Is Jason Miles real? Is he a real person?
That's awesome.
Like, he's real.
All right. Peace out,
Thank you, Jason. Y'all. Appreciate you.
Peace.
Oh, Lord. Well, Gene, I don't want to keep you from your dinner. I'm going to hang out for a little bit. You're welcome to chill, but I don't want to keep you from sustaining yourself in this difficult time.
I know. It's been a long day, but thank you so much for inviting me. It was good to talk with you. I think I'm going to go to bed and just have a nap, have a sleep. I'm not stressed. It's going to be terrible whichever way. Just think about it like that. Whoever
always looking on the bright side. It's bad no matter what.
It's going to be a tough time coming. It's going to be a tough 5 years. So
it's true. Well, I appreciate you, brother, and having friends like you is the sweet part of life. So that is the silver line, my friend. And I'll see you soon.
Good night.
All right, folks, we're going to hang out for a little bit. I'll try to take some questions. Man, it is not looking good. Let me pull up some of these maps here. I mean, y'all tell us if we're wrong. I mean, maybe we're feeding off of each other's. I mean, everyone had good energy, but everyone's a doom. Does anyone in the chat have any good news? I would love to see how the Dan Osborne race is going in Nebraska. I was told that he has a lead, but some people were telling me that it's not looking as strong as it needs to be. I was going to look a little bit closer at some of these Texas elections here. There's some that I'm very excited for on the local level. I'm going to pull up. Sorry to do a little hyper local stuff, but I want to see what's going on in Austin. We have a DSA endorsed candidate running for city council here that I'm very excited for, Mike Siegel. We'll see how he's doing. Jose Garza, who is the district attorney for Travis County, who Elon Musk, it turns out, was dropping a lot of money attacking to try to unseat here in the Austin area. He won his election. So I'm going to pull up local news real quick and see if I can get anything on our local races here. But really would. Sorry, y'all did not hear that, but these fucking local news sites, you can't use them anymore because they blast ads on you the second you open them. I would love to get some updates from y'all. So if y'all in the chat have any updates, we can get into that. I'm happy to take some questions and chat with y'all. Just a quick programming reminder for our patrons, the $10 and above patrons, we're going to have a conference call tomorrow to talk about the results of the election, where we think the left needs to go, what people would like to see from Left Reckoning, whatever happens over the next few hours. So that will be at around 4 p.m. Central. So that's for our $10 and above patrons. You get access to that patreon.com/love reckoning. We're going to have our main show Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central. So we'll have a lot of opportunities to keep on talking. But I'm happy to hang out with y'all for a little bit if there's questions or updates. You know, this is we don't know what the final results are, but they're looking bad. And this is the fact that it's close is again, like I think the result of a real failure of vision from the Democratic Party. I think Kamala Harris ran a very poor campaign. I think that they had a lot of opportunities to beat Trump. And I think one of the things that's really dangerous and is really important to sort of keep in mind is that Trump is exceptionally beatable. And these victories for the right wing, for the reactionary, anti-democratic right in this country, are the result of a Democratic Party that has turned its back on everyday people, turned its back on working class people, has wanted to recreate. And this is something Matt and I have been talking about. But there's been a fantasy for elites in this country to really craft that pure party, right? Of the wealthy in the center of this country. And that was something that Matt can talk about this better than me, that like Nixon really wanted to craft. And it's certainly something that I think Kamala Harris and her people thought that they might be able to do here. Because the fact of the matter is that this wasn't written in stone. These were deliberate choices by Kamala Harris and the Kamala Harris campaign to not run a populist campaign, to not run against the billionaire class that is so perfectly embodied by somebody like Donald Trump, by somebody like Elon Musk, by somebody like by somebody like RFK, right? From like a silver spoon elite political family, right? They're unable to speak to people's frustration in this country, and the real pain that folks are feeling, and that's a failure on their part. Now, there's a lot of um, there's a lot of reasons why they're doing that. A lot of them are structural, right? That I think Kamala Harris really is more aligned with capital. She was very aligned with Wall Street. She's very aligned with big tech. So she didn't want to threaten her friends and her allies. And I think that sort of tied her hands. And she was not somebody willing to rise to the moment. Now, again, could flip, could be wrong. But the fact that it's close is a result of that. All right, I'll take some questions. Our friend Jeffrey, who I'm assuming is speaking to us from Canada, and appreciate the chat here. Jeffrey says, "Why do so many of the small regions in America, like Iowa, have such a big influence in the election?" Well, I mean, it's because Iowa, in terms of like the presidential election, um, that has been kind of solidly Republican for a while, but it plays a big role. It has played a big role in the primary system for a long time because the way the primary system is set up is the primaries in this country, I think, should be done in one go, just like the presidential election is. The fact that we have this kind of system of these slow rolling primaries means that there's a lot of opportunities. For certain states, to get a little sparkle and shine. But there's no reason that we shouldn't be running a popular democracy and having the election be on one day or on a very short window of time. But instead, there's this preference for this very slow roll, long campaign season, which I don't think is particularly helpful for democracy. So that's why Iowa has always has a big role, similar to a state like South Carolina. But it's the Electoral College, and the Electoral College was set up from the get go to weaken the power of the quote unquote mob, because American democracy was a project, certainly revolutionary in the sense of destroying the old rights of kings, and had some progressive elements to it, but was also a system that was very, very worried about what would happen if the rabble was able to come into power. So we have this archaic system that's set up to empower, regions instead of people, and that's something that's very damaging and dangerous, and something that, again, a real democratic revival in this country would need to address. Senator Maria says, and I appreciate you so much, friend, who says, I know this fucking hurts, but we still have each other. We can't give up on community solidarity, and I dare say love. And look, I hear you, and I know, sometimes it can seem a little sentimental, but no, especially, if the results are looking like it might be a Republican um, victory here for the president. I mean, solidarity is what is going to be necessary to confront it, both in the short term of building up the ability to confront the attacks on our human rights, our civil rights, our labor rights. We're going to have to be able to organize and fight and work together in a way that we haven't seen. The fullest extent over the past few years. The one good thing is that there has been, this upsurge in more novel and radical labor organizing in the U.S. That's something that should give us hope, and it's something that the Democratic Party sort of turned their backs on. So that might be a kind of message for us to sort of build up and build out from those grassroots movements that we have, and to really focus on those, because there's no way that we're going to be rescued from any power up on high, and that comes for people in Texas. Especially who are now facing the the devastating alliance of a federal government that's hostile to humanity and to people and to democracy, and a state government that is equally hostile to humanity, people, and democracy. We're really going to have to look at what our power is, and we have a lot of power. Liberals like to focus on the vote, right? Certainly, that plays a role. But America is a very productive country, right? It's a country that produces a lot of value for capitalists, and we should use that power that we have to force our demands. And you know, if this means people return to that realization, that will probably be something that'll be very necessary over the near future. It's looking very, very difficult to see a path for Kamala Harris. And I want to pull up. I'm going to look really quick, and I'm sorry I don't have anyone else with me to sort of keep me abreast of things. So I have to do this as we're chatting. But if anybody who's watching could give us any sense of how the House is looking. I mean, the Senate, I think at this point is probably very likely to go Republican, right? I mean, the Democrats had a pretty uphill task there, and I think the fact that they were talking about trying to flip Texas, I think shows how difficult it was for them. I think probably a lot of the Congress races are going to be a little bit too difficult to call now. But I don't know what the next few years look like in terms of the House and the Senate. But if it turns out the way that it looks like it might, it's going to be very, very difficult. The idea of having another more opportunities for the right wing to cement their power over the anti-democratic Supreme Court, extremely worrying. Dan Osborne is now trailing in Nebraska by about 1% or so. But I don't know if they'll be able to turn that around. Ted Cruz, I don't know if there's been a final call there, but I have a feeling, Ted Cruz is up by about 10% over Colin Allred. I think that campaign was always a kind of a long shot, not just because of it being Texas and the map, but because I think Colin Allred ran a terrible campaign. And I think a lot of people, we're going to talk a lot tomorrow about this kind of stuff, but it makes me really fucking mad to see how poorly Democrats have done in the state of Texas, having multiple decades. I mean, the last time I was a child, I was 2, the last time a Democrat had won state office in the state. And there has just been so little effort to fix those fundamental problems. And, Beto O'Rourke, for all of his flaws, seemed to show that there might be another kind of possibility in 2018. Squandered the goodwill when he ran for governor after his failed presidential run. But the Colin Allred campaign seems like, despite all the money And despite all the talk about the changes and the demographics and all this kind of stuff, to be a loser. And I think one thing that's really worrying about Texas, and I think that this is something that I know for not everybody's in Texas or follows Texas or cares even about it closely, but Texas is a very worrying example of what can happen. Right, Texas was a fairly competitive, to strong Democratic state for for a significant portion of the 20th century, and they lost it. And then instead of figuring out how can we win elections, how can we change the trajectory, because the right wing and people in the Republican Party looked at Texas and licked their lips because they said, "I think there is an opportunity to shift the politics in the state," and they did it. The Democratic Party, instead of actually doing the work and engaging in the political struggles and making the tactical decisions that are necessary to flip and make themselves more competitive here, they started telling themselves a fairy tale. And they told themselves a fairy tale for the vast majority of the 2000s that they were hoping that they were going to cash in on now, which was that demographics were going to be destiny, right? Is that as the white population of the state, as the Anglo population of the state ceased to be the majority in Texas, that they were just going to be able to roll through elections. Well, the fact of the matter is that you aren't given any votes for free. You have to go out and earn them and fight for them. And Democrats have always said two things: demographics are in Texas. Demographics are destiny, right? Oh, the state's going to change, and we're just going to start winning elections. And two, the other cliche is Texas is not a red state; it's a non-voting state. And it's 100% true that Texas does have lower turnout typically than other states. But when they get higher turnout, it does not necessarily mean that Democrats win in this state. There's a lot of hope that with all these new people coming to Texas, that Texas was going to become more competitive for the Democrats. The problem with that is that a lot of the people who come to Texas are coming to Texas because they're right wingers from California or Indiana or wherever they're coming from, and they want to live under a Republican state. So this assumption that God was just going to give you a victory effectively, right, through population shifts was so fucking wrongheaded, and that was the strategy. Instead of investing in the kind of ground up party building that you need to do to be able to challenge a machine like the Republican Party, which is a well-oiled machine at this point, right? They win. There was just fantasy talk and talk to donors, because the demographics is destiny thing doesn't really make a lot of sense if you know anything about politics. But do you know who loves that kind of thing? Donors from out of state. And that's why Texas has continued to be a state that runs very, very expensive elections, despite the fact that the Democrats aren't able to really get a foothold here. And now we're seeing this fundamental threat where even the fact that while Texas, the state map might be very red, the urban areas are blue, so you could protect people from the excesses of Republican rule. Those are all under threat now with the Death Star bill, which is going to be used to protect. So to preempt all kinds of laws, from labor to water use to basic protections for people's civil rights, for their humanity. Very, very dangerous. Fantasy politics, politics untethered from reality. Politics that are designed to be a package that you sell to a donor instead of something that you run on and win on. And that's something that you can see with the way that the Democratic Party thought that Trump was going to be, a godsend to them, in the sense that he was going to destroy the Republican Party. And Democrats were going to, he was going to destroy the Republican Party by discrediting it. And Democrats were going to be able to sleepwalk into elections. Now, Trump is a liability, right? But because the Democrats are committed to a certain kind of politics and anti-democratic politics fundamentally, because the Democrats, as you saw this with the Bernie Sanders election, you see this with the way a lot of state Democratic parties are run. You see this even in states like New York, which is solidly Democratic, right? But that is a state that is run by a machine, that is not very open to grassroots politics. That's why organizations like the Working Families Party and organizations like DSA have to fight so hard to get progressives elected in that state. And they, DSA in New York, I'm hoping, they were able to pull off some victories there. They've been a kind of bright spot in showing how you win elections. But that's a state that is run by a Democratic Party that is too hostile to democracy. And there needs to be a fundamental shift in our politics. There needs to be a revival of working class politics. And it's not going to come from the consultant class. It's not going to come from the Democratic Party leadership. It's going to have to come from us. And that's the really, really, I think, difficult situation that we're finding ourselves in. Christopher Cotton says, what do the Republicans that publicly came out for Kamala do with the Trump victory? Well, they're done. I mean, they made their decisions. I think a lot of them, some of them might have made it for personal moral ones. I think a lot of them thought there might be an opportunity for them. I mean, Kamala Harris was saying she was going to put Kamala Harris vote. The Republican Party is dangerous. We have to defeat them. Also, we love the Republican Party, and we want them to support us. And I'll put one of them in the cabinet. Doesn't really seem like you're too serious about the danger that Republicans show. Thank you, Christopher, for that. I mean, the abortion thing too, and it should be a winning issue. You look at the polling on it. 500 USD says the only R-read ads I saw were about abortion. Not that it's not important, but it's so obviously not enough. I mean, but I think that a lot of those things fell kind of flat. I mean, there's some very visceral and powerful ads about abortion in the state, but R-read barely campaigned. He barely campaigned. We tried covering on the show. It was very difficult because they weren't doing big events. They weren't inspiring lots of folks. They thought that if they ran, because Colin Allred ran ads on abortion, and he also ran ads that he was going to be tougher on the border than Ted Cruz, and that was going to be a loser. And this is not a big surprise. It's been looking at it, but we're hearing this and appreciate it. At War with Dusk over on Twitch says the AP has called the race for Ted Cruz. So we're here, friends. It is the country over party. I mean, this is a bad result. Deshaun says, I'm on food stamps and can't afford rent. Well, you don't no need to send us stuff if you're in a difficult spot. Appreciate hearing from you. And I wish that there was some situation that they fucking ran a campaign trying to convince people that the economy was working for them when everybody in the country was saying that the economy wasn't working for them. And you can gripe and whine about, oh, it's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair that they blame us. Well, y'all are the party in power. And that's how politics has always worked. And the fact of the matter is that they did not run. It is bullshit. If anyone tells you right now that they think that the Kamala Harris campaign ran a strong campaign on the economy and making life better for working people, they're full of it. Yeah, they did the kind of Democrat thing that they do. We believe in opportunity. We believe in chances for everyday people, right? But it's that kind of soft populism where if you're not talking about it, you can't talk about inequality and pain and suffering in this country if you don't talk about the people who are doing it. And they never effectively do that because they want to be the party of that same class of people who are the ones that are exploiting everybody. And all of these people out here who do political commentary for the major networks and write for the major newspapers, shouldn't say all, but a lot of them, right? They all say if you just talk about the economy, you're talking about the economy. And it has this fundamental assumption to it that voters are stupid, that the American people are stupid, which is such an insulting, and it's viscerally insulting. And this fantasy that you hear whenever people talk about the American voter, it's always dismissive. Oh, they don't really understand anything. They're stupid. They're confused. No, people fucking understand a lot more than they get credit for. And when you do this kind of soft economic talk, right, where you say we need to have an opportunity economy, we need to give people a chance, people know you're full of shit if you're not talking about the people who are getting away with murder, the people who are making life difficult for the working class in this country. So if you have economic messages that you're not talking about that, calling them out by name as a class, the ruling class, the capitalist class, the bosses, whatever terminology you want to use for them, people know you are full of shit. They know you are full of shit. So don't let anyone sit here and say, "Oh, they tried to running on the economy, but it didn't work." No, no. They lived through it. They lived through it. They never get enough fucking respect. They never respect voters in this country. You know, a group of people. Group of people that always gets attacked for this is like, oh, well, rural voters. Rural voters think they were left behind, but they don't really understand. They don't really understand. No, they do. You go, you look at this stuff. There's a great book here called The Rural Voter. It's on my bookshelf, whatever. That really did the work of investigating how Republicans have been able to pick up these votes. Now, should the Republican Party be the beneficiaries of this? Probably not. But the Republican Party recognized that there's a lot of people who felt left behind by NAFTA, by the policies of the Democrats, and people accurately pointed at the figures that did it: Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. People understand a lot more than they get credit for. Not saying that they're right by being Republicans. Not saying that supporting the Republican Party is right, but this idea that everyone just sort of bamboozled and doesn't understand what they're doing, that's insulting, and it's not a way to get out of this mess. Oh man. I mean, we're gonna have a lot. We're gonna have a lot to talk about over the next few days. Argyle Bird says the whole language about middle class instead of working class is a big problem, at least from the UK. Yeah, I mean, they don't like to talk about the working class because that has an implication to it. Because if there's a working class, there's a taking class, a non-working class. Now, maybe this is premature. Maybe we've just got bad vibes. Elections can go this way. But as we're looking now, I mean, I'm still seeing Michigan looking rough, Pennsylvania looking, it's close. Anything's possible. And I think this is exactly right here. This and Gaza is Biden's legacy. I think that, after Trump and during COVID, the Biden administration had a real opportunity to sort of reverse and repair the relationship that they had with voters in this country. And at every chance, they ran away from it. If it was not fighting for the victories that they achieved early on and popular policies that they had, they wanted more than anything to say, hey, we've stopped doing the aid. The aid's over because the pandemic's over. They wanted that narrative. And then on Gaza, I mean, they were happy to see that part of the world turned into a crater to maintain the position and the ideology and the people around them. And I think that's right. This is their legacy. The Bridge Nation has a optimistic question. They said, question, where does the Republican Party go post-Trump? I mean, the thing is with the Republican Party post-Trump, we're going to have to see what more Trump looks like if these results hold. And it seems like if he gets another term. Trump does kind of suppress a lot of contradictions within the Republican Party. I don't think the Republican Party gets nicer post Trump. I think, again, look at a state like Texas to see how crafted in Trump's image the Republican Party of Texas has become. Look at the way that Governor Greg Abbott has been running the state, pretty much unconstitutionally increasing his power. Look at somebody like our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who gets as a impeachment trial against him for blatant corruption, gets away with it scot-free, right? I think that, there's a lot of continuity in how a lot of Republicans feel like they can govern in under Trump, around Trump. And, I don't see that stopping. I would wonder if the national level they'll be able to maintain this coalition, but 4 years is a long time to start thinking about right now. And, it's hard to know. A good friend Colt Dog says, "How worried do I need to be about Elon Musk if Trump wins?" I think you should be very worried. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I think the idea of handing over our regulatory apparatus to a billionaire who has a fundamental contempt for people, for American democracy, for the idea of checks on their power is exceptionally dangerous to the entire system that we have in this country. And, its eradication is not going to replace it with something better under Musk and Trump. So, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have good news, and we'll figure out what we need to do. But no, I think, Musk, with regards to Musk, the only hope you can have is that Trump keeps him on a leash, because Trump doesn't want somebody else competing with him for power and influence. But I don't know. It's crazy. They really, really gave this away. And our good friend Jeffrey talks about somebody who we should all be learning from and reading and thinking about all the time, especially right now, Leo Panitch. Jeffrey says Leo Panitch was deeply concerned with the state of the left and the failure of social democratic and revolutionary movements to provide an alternative to these forms of right-wing populism. And that's the thing, is that if you want to call the long, what folks like Anton Yeager and others have called the long 2010s, a populist moment, a populist explosion, the one that's left is the reactionary right. Labor Party dismantled, the radical Labor Party, the Corbyn movement dismantled. You have a kind of right wing to centrist Labor Party. So he's we can go through all the list of them. The one holdout is in Mexico with Moreno, but I think that I would call that something different than populism. I think that was a particular movement that I think we can learn a lot of lessons from. But I don't know if I would give that the same genesis as Bernie and Corbyn and them. Maybe my buddies Kurt and Jose Luis disagree with me on that, but yeah, I think that this is something to be very concerned about. That the left populist movement did not have this. The thing with the left populist movement is that it was very exuberant and energetic, but it did not have the capacity to sustain itself, and it has to sustain itself at a different level than the reactionary right does, right? Because the reactionary right is not a movement towards something. It's not a movement of democratization. It's not a movement of of increasing popular sovereignty or anything like that. It's not a movement against capital, right? So left populism has a more difficult task in front of it to sustain itself because it is going to be shut out of the institutions. It's going to have to push down and break down those doors. And right wing reactionary populism, the reactionary right doesn't have that. Um, and we have to figure out how to sustain. And at this point in the US, I mean, recraft and recreate and reignite it. And maybe that starts from something more grassroots and connected to a working class base than what we had for that first round. But we certainly have to do something different because, it seemed like something was going to break through there and it didn't, you know? Atheist Danny says, is reform at the local and state level the only way to challenge the federal duopoly and corruption? It isn't a quick fix, but is there an alternative, eliminating gerrymandering, more ranked choice voting, et cetera? So, I mean, these things have to exist at the local and state level, just in the sense of like, if they exist, they have to exist, like temporal, like they have to exist, right? But we can't retreat into localism. We have to be able to do two things at once. We have to exist on the national level. This is why it was so damaging, for example, that there wasn't a Democratic primary, right? Where even if they don't win, somebody comes out there and says there is an alternative kind of politics. There is something else out there. Instead, what we got was same old continuation of failed Democratic Party policy under Kamala Harris, under Joe Biden, embodied by his corpse, and then via Kamala Harris. You need to have um, something that exists on that national level to be able to inspire and to engage and to coordinate a movement. But it also has to exist on a kind of local level. And on the other kind of democratic fixes, eliminating gerrymandering, ranked choice voting, you're not going to be able to get those until you have the movement. Now, this is the difficult thing, because structurally, the fact that we don't have something like ranked choice voting, the fact that we have don't have control of balance, right? Really fair access to balance in this country makes it really difficult to build up these kind of alternatives, but we have to be able to build them, right? Um, so we have to figure out a way to sustain ourselves even when we're not in power, and to be engaged in politics in a way that requires anybody associated or a part of our movement to not be placated, and to not become enmeshed with a party inside of a Democratic Party where they're working against grassroots working class movements. And that's the historical task of our generation, of our political moment. It's really fucking difficult. If I had the roadmap, I'd tell you how to do it, but that is our historical task right now. There's just no other way around it. There's no other way around it other than despair, and we will not fall into that. I refuse to fall into that. And and I on these kind of quick fixes to democracy too. Like I think that there's probably reforms that are better than others. But I think that what's more important than getting some kind of one quick fix to fix a flawed American democracy is going to have a working class movement. We can overcome any kind of structural barrier. So I don't think, for example, that like ranked choice voting, because it exists in certain places, that does not effectively mean that a socialist movement pops up. In fact, these things oftentimes can, these reforms can very quickly be incorporated, and work in favor of the ruling class. I love this would be a nice thing. We'll hang out for a couple more minutes. We're gonna have a blog show tomorrow. We're gonna do a big program, in the evening at 4 o'clock Central for our $10 and above patrons. Matt and I are going to go and we're going to do a conference call with y'all and talk about what's next, what people are seeing on the ground. Any news like this, we'd love to hear. Brian Denning says preliminary results in Portland, Oregon show 2 DSA socials running for city council are likely to win seats in their district. We knocked 10,000 doors for each. So proud of our chapter. That's wonderful. That's exactly the kind of thing that we need right now. I think that's exactly the kind of work that we need right now, is building up our own independent strength. Because the fact of the matter is that these guys are they're gonna screw everyday people over. They're just incapable of winning. I think a lot of people took too much hope and solace from the victory in the midterms. I don't think that they were prepared. For what was coming next. I could take a few more questions from folks. I think the majority report thing just ran. I bet that was probably a lot of fun. I hope everyone had a good time there. We've been having a little bit of an evening with all this great news that we're getting. I think that we can't fall into the trap of despair. We have to be serious about building power and getting ourselves to where we need to be as a political movement. Matt Leck and I are going to talk a lot tomorrow during our episode of Left Reckoning. Yeah, it's a bleak moment. I mean, this is an election that, again, I think if the results hold, and I don't know, I'm watching this all live with y'all. I've been streaming, so I haven't been able to dive deep into everything, but this is a significant loss. Friar Texas, the quote Yogi Berra, and over till it's over. It's true. Anything could happen. And it's just, and it's heartbreaking too, as heartbreaking as all this is knowing that the Democrats take this as a signal to move further to the right. The people of Gaza continuing to suffer, and really no end in sight to this. It's a really extremely difficult political moment here. And I think everyone who's been giving folks easy answers to American politics, ideas that like demographics are going to be destiny, ideas that you're just going to be gifted from God, elections, that's been shown to be very wrong. I think, yeah, it's the tough one. Man, we got a lot of people who just showed up. I could take a couple questions. We've been chatting for a while. I mean, it's bleak, it's difficult. If not, Matt and I have our show tomorrow where we're going to be going deep into this. We're going to have a conference call tomorrow morning, not tomorrow morning, at 4 Central for our patrons. You can sign up to get access to that. There was a lot of people warning about this. I mean, in Jacobin, there was that excellent piece I talked about with Jason earlier about the danger of the way that the Kamala Harris campaign was framing this election. The fact of the matter is that they ran away from what made their campaign popular at the get-go. They were unable to run an effective economic populist message. It came off fake, tinny, wrong. And they made a decision. I'll take a couple questions. I'll look at the chat and I'll take a couple questions here. But if anything, if the results stand as is looking, the Democratic Party, the Kamala Harris campaign, they made a decision that they wanted to win this election a certain way with a certain demographic, with a certain groups of people that were not included that, and most importantly, was working class voters. They thought that they were going to be able to win with wealthy people in the suburbs, with centrists, and with fucking Republicans, and effectively put up two middle fingers to anybody concerned about the genocide in Gaza, to anybody who is even opposed to the Republican Party, which we all know is a party with a death wish. You know, Kamala Harris was saying that they were going to put Republicans in the fucking cabinet. They wanted to win with a certain group of people. And either because of hubris, because they thought that this election was in the bag and they were going to be able to get away with it, or because they did not want to win and deal with what would come if they had to run on a more populist program, because they didn't want to upset Wall Street, the people who Kamala Harris has spent her entire career aligned with. That's the takeaway. I mean, that's my takeaway right now. We'll look at the numbers. We'll look at what happened if these shifts that have been sort of being telegraphed to us, that, you know, the continuation of class alignment of the Democratic Party losing and alienating more and more working class voters. We'll see how significant that was, how true that was. But the takeaway is that this campaign of the Democratic Party made a deliberate choice to run away from a popular majority and to embrace a narrow coalition that they thought that they would govern better with, because it's more aligned with the way that they want to govern, which is to not attack entrenched wealth in this country, to not address the lack of democracy in this country, and to not fundamentally attack the entrenched interests of capital in the United States. And that was the decision that they made. And the fact of the matter is they all get away with it. They all continue to live their nice life. They get a lot of money, right? They all make money off of this kind of thing. And many, many people will suffer under a second Trump administration, not the least of them, people in Gaza. All right, I can take a couple from y'all before we run. Jeffrey says, what would Rick Roderick, the West Texas philosopher and labor organizer, have thought of where we are at in 2024? You know, I think I would love to hear it. I mean, you know, I think that there's a lot of lessons that we can take from some of the great folks who are advocating for politics that might have seemed impossible when they're advocating for it. That should give us hope. I think that there's a lot of value in looking at what we were given, the opportunity that we had. We had an opportunity. We had significant momentum on the left after the Trump victory in 2016. That was utilized effectively to get some significant gains for the left, but it wasn't able to sustain itself. So I think the fundamental questions that we need to be asking are, what structurally went wrong with the left between that 2017 and let's call it 2020, 2021, 2022, when you started to see that enthusiasm and that movement that seemed to be ascendant begin to dissipate. And I think that's the real question we can be asking ourselves. Micah says, thank you for all that you do. No matter who wins, we still have to fight the same oligarchs. And I totally agree with that. And I think that that's sort of where we're at. And I think that it is too easy, and it's exactly what they want us to do, is to fall into despair. Refuse to do that. Refuse to do that. I'll take a couple more before we run. Inconspicuous Toaster says, being a lefty is hard. The fight never stops. Libs are unreliable allies, and it's really hard to see how things will change for the better right now. But that's why the fight can't stop. I feel that's correct. All right, folks. Tomorrow, 4 Central, for our $10 and above patrons, Matt, Leck, and I are going to be doing a phone call with our patrons to talk about the election, to talk about where we think the left needs to go. We would really love if people came there and told us about bright spots from people's organizing, the work that y'all are all doing on the ground. We really need to reorient. This is one thing Matt and I were talking about before the election, is that one of the things that we're going to do on Left Reckoning over the next few months is a kind of sustained segment. We're going to get a lot of guests to talk about, to recenter our movement, to really talk, what is the socialist perspective healthcare, right? Where is the fight right now? What is what is the conversation around homelessness need to be? All of these kind of things, I think that we have stopped thinking about what that better world needs to be and how to get there. And I think that that's really critical right now, because the tendency and what we're all going to fall into, and I feel it right now, I have the same energy as everyone else, is to get snipey, to get angry. And you should be angry, and you should utilize that energy in a way that is constructive. And to do that, you have to actually have a clear vision for what a better world looks like, not just in opposition to the current one, but what a better world will look like. So, in addition to all the other coverage that we're going to be doing, we want to reorient about what our vision as democratic socialists is for a different country, for a better future. That's something that's going to be coming up in the next few months on this program. Um, so we'll be talking about that a little bit, previewing that with our patrons during that conference called tomorrow at 4 Central, and then 6 o'clock Central. Matt and I, once the dust is settled and we have some more information and can talk about things a little bit more, we'll be back with episode 193 of Left Reckoning. I wish I had a. Sorry, this is going to play. Apologies. I wish I had a better way to close out. Here's what I'll say. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest. Actually, I'm going to go and take a flip through it after this. I wrote a review for Jacobin of a book called Mean Things Happening in This Land. It was a book by a labor organizer in the South named H.L. Mitchell, and him and a bunch of other people who are all members of the Socialist Party of the United States of America organized a union for tenant farmers in the South. Tenant farming in this country was extremely difficult work. It was work that was hyper exploited. It was essentially an extension of the plantation slave system. They created all these kind of rules and laws that basically kept working people indebted to wealthy landowners in the South. So we're talking about Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, to a certain level. Those people were some of the poorest people in the country. They had low rates of literacy. They had an active Ku Klux Klan fighting against them, because this was an organization that was amongst one of the first interracial unions in this country. And the Southern Tenant Farmers Union went up against the federal government, the state government, the Ku Klux Klan, the sheriffs, the police, and the wealthy in their community. You know how fucking hard that was? You know how bleak and difficult that would sound? If I were painting that picture, does that sound like conditions that would be good for organizing for a better world? No, but they did it. And it's not because, and it's one of those things, like, it's never going to be easy, but people are capable of amazing things. And we are capable of incredible things when we work together and have solidarity and have these sustained movements that are about bringing people together, politics, but also just looking out for one another. Even years after the Southern tenant farmers, even tenant farming, ends eventually, in the 70s, you had members of the Southern tenant farmers just organizing money to send out to folks in their old age to look after another, right? A lifetime of solidarity, right? Born out of one of the most difficult fights that you could ever imagine. And, the deck can be stacked against you. It's going to be difficult. But if those folks could do it, we can too. And that's where I'll have to take it from here, is that looking at those movements is this thing that should give you a bit of hope, not to escape and to not engage in politics today, but to know that people have overcome all kinds of difficulty. And the historical task that we have, the revolutionary task that we have, is to figure out how we can do that in the future. I mean, in the present. Appreciate the super chat here from you. Very apt name, Bloody by Thought. We appreciate talking with you. I love talking with y'all. I know Matt loves talking with y'all. Sensoria Maria says, David, hold you in radical gratitude in your mind and heart. Please don't give up or give in. You have us. We appreciate you. I'll stand with y'all always. We don't have the choice of despair, friends. We'll be back tomorrow, 6 Central for the main show. Join us for our call for patrons around 4 Central, $10 and above patrons. I appreciate all of y'all so much. We'll have more information tomorrow.